Hello, we are Coping Life Talk, and we are excited about hosting today Erin Mayfield. Hello, Erin. I
Oh,
hope
it's
you're having a
wonderful
good
to be here.
day. And as always, we say a little about our Coping Life Talk podcast. We started 2 years ago, and I'm Dr. Lydia Istomina. And since the topic is coping, so it is all about how we people cope, and we cope with
Mhm.
multiple situations during the day, right?
Yes,
But also, it is not just during the day because some issues related to our health,
mhm.
relationship, stress, they're kind of prolonged and sometimes they're kind of lingering, and
Yes.
especially when it comes to health, and it's
Mhm.
lots of preventative measures can be done, not to end in that end of the tunnel that sometimes prevents us from visioning and seeing the light, correct?
Yes,
So, Erin,
absolutely.
welcome to our Coping Life Talk podcast, and please introduce yourself first.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Lydia. I'm thrilled to be here. It's quite a privilege to share time with you and also to share time with your audience. I love the title of your podcast. It's very engaging. And I think when people hear the title of your podcast, they know that they're going to receive tips and and coping mechanisms and ways to improve their health, their physical health, and their mental health. So it's really lovely. And I know with your extensive background, you bring lots of wisdom and expertise to this area. So it's lovely work, and I'm very grateful for you. So
Thank
personally, yes, um, I am a board certified gynecologist and also recently a board certified lifestyle medicine physician. So I practiced OBGYN in the suburbs of Atlanta for almost 30 years. And of course, I've spent thousands of hours talking to women. I loved my women in my practice, and I really focused on preventative health. When I moved to Florida, I I was not working as a gynecologist. And in fact, soon after I moved, I fell and I ruptured all of the tendons in my rotator cuff, required surgery and rehabilitation, which gave me lots of time to read. And it was during this time that I discovered this field of lifestyle medicine. It's a fairly newly organized medical specialty. But what we do is we focus on the 6 pillars of health because we know that people need to get back to basics to get um, out of this uh, vicious cycle of chronic disease, of feeling terrible and taking medication. So the 6 pillars of health are focusing on getting away from the standard American diet, processed foods and foods heavy in salt, fat, and sugar. We focus on eating whole plant foods and cooking in our kitchens. We focus on movement. We know that when people exercise 150 minutes a week, and that can be 30 minutes of walking 5 days a week, dramatically decreases cardiovascular risk. Some movement, healthy relationships, stress management, avoidance of chemicals, and and um, and of course, I'm blanking out on the last one. So we'll get to that in a minute. So and sleeping well, of course, therapeutic sleep. So it all works together for health.
I'm glad you brought up so many different aspects of our health.
Yeah.
That one is linked to another, like sleep and food.
Yes,
You start sleeping poorly, then your eating habits change, and so not
that's right.
eating right affects our sleep pattern. So. Thank you, and I like your approach. And let me introduce both topics subtopics that we will offer today to our audience. So, first of all,
Okay.
how stress peaks in the 40s, which is truly how it happens. Because suddenly we start sensing that all the stress we were enduring as young people suddenly start kind of making a heavier effect on our health, on our thought processing, on our sleep, on our relationship. And of course, the second part of our podcast, we will talk about what you just brought up, how exercise and movement helps manage stress and boost the feel good brain chemicals as much
Yes.
as an antidepressant, because the whole country, I'm from Russia, but back in our country people did have some antidepressant, but not how Americans kind of overuse it, from my perspective. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are other ways to control our anxieties and our depression. So um,
Yes.
let's begin with, first of all, why is that when we get to a certain age, stress starts picking up?
Oh my goodness. I've learned this through the years in talking to thousands of women. I think when we're younger, we have an expectation that as we go through life and we have a successful career and we have a family, that as we go through the years, that things will calm down, that we won't have so much stress. But in fact, when women get into their 40s, they have um, they have wonderful success in their career, which also brings stress. But they're trying to manage a family. They're trying to raise children. Most women in their 40s are dealing with teenagers. They've got a husband, and they've got a lot of financial obligations. They've got a lot of stress in that department. And then the ovaries and the hormone secretions from the ovaries start to change, which can really make a woman feel topsy-turvy. So we know that the ovaries produce hormones on a monthly cycle. We know that when women have a menstrual cycle, their estrogen levels and progesterone levels are the lowest. And as the egg develops in the month, the estrogen levels increase to about 2 weeks into their cycle when they pop the egg, and then they produce both the female hormones, estrogen and progesterone, and they continue to climb little by little until either she becomes pregnant or she's not pregnant and the hormone levels drop and she's allowed to have a cycle. What happens in the 40s is those hormone signals are not as strong and they're not as consistent. And when hormone signals start to vary, the menstrual cycle can start to vary. Bleeding can become irregular, bleeding can be heavy, women can skip cycles, but internally they feel this difference and they feel these hormone changes, which can lead to more anxiety, headaches, difficulty sleeping, hot flashes in the middle of the night, difficulty with bladder issues. So all of a sudden, you've got all of this hitting women at once in their 40s, and it can be extremely difficult. As women reach their late 40s and early 50s, all of that starts to calm down. Children are in college or through college. The ovaries are starting to calm down. Financial obligations have improved, and everything just seems to get better. So that's what I've seen in women experiencing stress in their 40s. And it just seems to pile on and become overwhelming at times. And it's times like this when women need support outside of their household. They need their doctors, they need their gynecologists, they need their pastor. Sometimes they have a professional coach or a therapist. But all of us work together to support women in their 40s, to help them through this very seemingly difficult and stressful time.
So I see on the screen now we have your website, and
Yep.
yes, and it's a beautifully done website. So that illustrates exactly what you're talking about, the path to a life, and
Yep.
to a life of transformation. So
Mhm.
when it is the time to start, that what you describe already, headaches and
Yeah.
sleeplessness, and then of course by this time many women gain lots of weight,
Yes.
and the stress just builds up and piles up, and
Mhm.
it's frustrating. And women, I know, they say, oh, I tried that and I tried this. So please share about your experience, like your methodology. How do you approach all these problems that we women start picking up after 40?
Yes.
So
Yes.
what is the difference?
Well, I would love to share how lifestyle medicine can support women in their 40s. We know that the standard American diet is very heavy in salt, fat, and sugar. and processed foods. Those types of foods have been stripped of their core nutrients. They're very high in what's called calorie density, which means that a small serving is very high in calories and fat. And when you eat those types of food, it doesn't take much to gain a lot of weight. So it's very easy to gain weight in America, and I talked about this a lot in the office. When you get away from fresh foods and you eat processed foods, it's just really packed full of fat and calories. So it's easy to gain weight, but it's also more difficult to lose because the fat and the calories in these foods, makes it harder to lose weight. It disrupts your internal hormone balance, and it disrupts how sugar is processed, how food is digested, how insulin works in your bloodstream to process the food that you digest. So when you continue to eat these types of foods, the weight just seems to stick. And I heard it for years in the office. Women would come in and say, I can't lose weight. I feel terrible. I can't sleep. I'm so sick and tired of taking medications. What am I going to do? And what I learned with lifestyle medicine was counseling women in the office once a year, trying to create a formula for them to lose weight, to start exercising, and really have this life transformation. It doesn't work with just one office visit. It doesn't work with handing women a piece of information that says, go home and do this. It doesn't work that way. Because lifestyle change and changing what you eat and how you eat and changing it for your family and incorporating it into our culture is it can be very stressful. It can be difficult and it can be overwhelming because it's completely new. So one of the things that we do in our practice is we like to support people long-term in their quest for health and changing their diet, learning how to cook plant-based foods, and transitioning their family to plant-based foods. And it can be done. When you make an honest effort to get rid of the processed foods and eat whole plant foods and cook fresh at home, you can actually see an improvement in your blood sugar in 72 hours. We can see improvement in the gut microbiome in 48 hours, which makes it easier to lose weight and digest food. We can see a drop in cholesterol in 30 points in a month, but it's all about getting away from the processed foods. Once we get away from the processed foods and we're focusing on our plant-based diet, we decrease internal inflammation in our body. We are eating healing foods. We can decrease our risk of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune diseases. There's a huge list of diseases where these types of foods drives the inflammation that causes the formation of these diseases. We know that 9 out of 10 people who are diabetic are only diabetic because of obesity, which means it's preventable. 80% of chronic diseases are preventable, which means there's a lot of unnecessary suffering and early deaths in our loved ones and friends in our country. We know that 75% of our fellow Americans are either overweight or obese at this point. We know that the military has declared obesity a national security crisis because 1 in 3 recruits can no longer pass the entrance physical exam. So it's an enormous issue. It's a devastating issue, but there is an answer, and that's not taking medication for the rest of your life. It is possible to change your destiny. You are not dependent on your genetics. And we are excited and thrilled to bring lifestyle medicine to Americans so to restore hope and in restoring health and having a long and healthy life.
on your website you have this tab, the 6 pillars of health, and
Yes.
what I hear, you exactly already started reflecting on all these principles that lead us to change, to transformation. And so, and what we see on the screen, you start with relationship, not with, like, for example, nutritional food changes. For some reasons your first one is positive relationships, and then healthy sleep, and avoidance of risky substances, and
Yes.
stress reduction, and moderate exercise, and
Uh-huh.
whole food plant based diet that you just talked about. So please,
Yes.
could you lead us through the 6 pillars of health? So is it the order is how you teach women, or you start individually for each woman, depending on her particular case?
Yes. So I'm able to see patients one on one so that I can 100% individualize what they need according to what's happening in their life. I also have a group course, but we limit the numbers of people in the group course to 20, what I call 20 teams. So
Mm.
with our course, we have a cash fee, but that includes 2 people because lifestyle change is a family affair. So I always invite the spouse, the partner, or if someone's single, I tell them to invite their best friend because I want to see 2 people working together to have fun with this. And we do have fun with this. We have a wonderful time with it. We know that all 6 pillars are related. So it's really hard to single one out and say, well, let's do this first or do that first. I try to hit on all of them to emphasize that they are related. When you look at evidence-based scientific studies, and we have a lot of them, we can actually show that when we look at the DNA, when we look at the genes, the end caps of the genes, the epigenetic section, actually changes depending on what we eat, how we sleep, whether or not we're using risky substances, smoking, drinking, using drugs, having loving relationships, being under chronic stress. We actually have the power to change our genetics with these 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine.
That is amazing. What I hear, I think, is very significant, because you know how people often say, "Oh well, I'm doomed. I have these poor genes. You know, my gene pool was toxic, and somebody spit into my gene pools." I've heard people say that, but
Yes,
what I hear from you, which is true for many people, yes. For example, my dad had a heart attack. No, I'm not talking about myself, but for example, people will say, I have this in my family, I have obesity, I cannot do anything.
right.
So, but I hear that you can actually modify it. So, could you
Yes.
spend a little more time on that?
Oh, absolutely. Because it is so
That's a
exciting.
hope. That's amazing news.
It
Very
is.
good news. Yes.
It is. It's very exciting because it does give us power over our destiny. And of course, part of the problem that people believe that they are locked into their genetics, that their future is locked into their family history, is because we in medicine have told them that for years. And we in medicine have told people, okay, you're diabetic, you're going to have to take this medication the rest of your life. Or you have high blood pressure, you're never going to get off this medication. When in fact, we know now that that's not true. That's old fashioned medicine. Um, so there is documentation, and it's beautiful documentation that shows even within 2 hours of eating a fat heavy meal, the end caps of the DNA of the chromosomes change. They shorten with, and they are, when they shorten, then that indicates shortened time, shortened lifespan, and inflammation. And, and that happens when you eat the standard American diet, when you eat fresh foods, fresh fruits and veggies, whole grains, nuts, seeds. When you focus on foods like that, those end caps within 2 hours of eating actually start to grow. So within 2 hours of a meal, your genetics, your chromosomes are actually reacting to that, which is an absolutely fascinating topic.
So then, when before we move to the second part, when we talk about exercise of movement, that actually help us manage stress, what you say is that when you approach it kind of from all angles,
Yes.
right? So, and then also you do not leave a person who is stressed out and kind of cornered by life, but you bring the partner, you bring a spouse, you engage the family, because what I hear, Erin, is that unless you change your patterns as a family, because you can't eat constantly. I tried, honestly. Like, for example,
Yes.
I'm dieting this week, and then that puts
Yes.
the whole family in a strain because it changes the grocery shopping, right? And it
Yes.
kind of singles me out. And
Yes.
it's maybe even adds to the stress more, because
Mhm.
I'm the only one. I never thought of that. I'm the only one who have a problem, for example, right? So let's say my husband, my children, they can eat whatever they want. No, what I hear you say, you have to approach it as a family.
Yes.
And then you
That's
mentioned also,
what
right,
Mhm.
but grocery shopping, for example, is a big part of what you say. But again, does it need to be modified? Does it need to be only organic? Can anything healthy be found in a grocery store?
Oh,
Where
that's
do
a
we
great question.
go? Yeah, okay,
Yes. So we are focusing on fresh fruits and vegetables, whole
okay,
grains, which would be beans, and all beans are lovely. They're high in fiber, they're high in nutrients. They feed our healthy bacteria in our gut, which also creates healthy chemicals and hormones, which help us thrive and feel good. So, chickpeas, black beans, red beans, cannellini beans, lentils are wonderful. All of those do the trick. And then our nuts and seeds and what's considered healthy fats, we minimize that, but we're looking at the fats in walnuts, for example, the fat in avocado. Those types of fats are considered the healthy fats. When you look at a plate, our goal is to fill half the plates with fruits and vegetables, one quarter with the protein, which is the beans, or tofu. Tofu works well too. And then one quarter with the healthy fats. We stay away from dairy and cheese. It doesn't matter what type of cheese you buy, it's all high in fat. When they say cheese is low fat, it's all relative. Low fat cheese is still over 30% fat. So, and cheese has a, a chemical in it that actually attaches to the addictive centers in your brain. So, cheese literally is addicting. And that's why so many people feel like they can't give up their cheese. But you can give up your cheese, and there are lots of lovely substitutes in the plant based world that we can demonstrate and teach you about where you can substitute that. When people transition to whole plant foods, if they do it for 2 weeks, they feel so much better. They're sleeping better, their digestive system works better, and they feel lighter and younger. They just don't want to go back. They just don't want to go back. And once we can get to that point, we generally can start ratcheting down and decreasing dosages of medications. So, my brother is a really wonderful example of that. He had open heart surgery at the end of December. And so when he was discharged from the hospital, I went up to stay with him for the next week. His physician wanted him to be monitored 24 hours a day, and I started cooking plant-based meals for him. And within 72 hours of him coming home, we had him off 3 diabetic medications at nighttime, and his blood sugars were normal. And so that's how powerful it is. And it's hard to believe when you first hear it, but it's true. And we've got decades of clinical application and people who have been very successful doing this. So it absolutely is possible. And it's very exciting work.
that's an excellent illustration, because usually we ask our podcast guests about success stories. And here's your own brother. And I think it's even more successful because, it's hard to change your own family members. Very hard. I remember I took care of my mom, and to tell mom that, Mom, you should not, let's do not eat that much sugar. Let's do not eat that much sweets. and she will just say simply, "Don't teach me." She will say, "Don't preach at me." And so you see, so it's much harder to truly deal with the family members, because it's a different dynamic, uh, comparing with what you have with your clients, with your patients, correct? So I'm glad
Yes,
that your brother listened, and maybe
yes,
just his personality, or maybe because after surgery, people start thinking different. I'm
that's
glad
right.
that in 3 weeks he showed such progress with sugar level. But listening to your, let's go back to what you described, what should be on the plate. Because
Yeah.
when you says, and it should be like a little of protein, and instead of saying chicken or meat, you says beans. So
Mhm.
that means that you eliminate completely any meats and poultry.
Yes, that's correct. So we
That's what
stay
it is
away
based
from,
on.
yes, we stay away from animal products.
You killed my spirit today, Amy. Erin, when you said that cheese is addictive, because cheese is such a big part of. I always take it as a protein group, right? And
Yes.
also, I like particular cheeses, and it's nice, like apples, fruits, and cheese. It's kind of a nice snack for me. But okay, so I'm listening, I'm learning, and what also I always thought about beans, are they not kind of too high in calories and do not make you gain weight?
Oh, no. No, they really don't. Beans are very low in calories. And when you're eating fresh fruits and vegetables, which really are very low in calories, you need the extra calories from the beans that you will get in one serving. And so most of the time, what's considered one serving of beans is 1/2 cup. So it's lovely to eat a cup a day or a cup and a half a day, but one serving is 1/2 cup. So our goal is to eat about 3 servings a day, which is very reasonable when you look at the size of a 1 cup measuring cup. Now, some people do have trouble with the fiber in the beans, and they do have gas with beans. Most of the time, that's because they're not accustomed to eating the beans and they
Mm.
don't have the appropriate bacteria in their gut to process those beans, because the bacteria in the gut changes depending on the type of the food you eat. Bacteria in your gut when you eat healthy plant foods and when you stay away from animal foods. It's a very different balance than when you eat animal foods. So the bacteria that grow and help you digest your plant foods are those bacteria that also are anti-inflammatory, that promote healing, that promote gut health. The foods that promote uh, inflammatory processes, inflammatory chemicals, and the bacteria that promote those types of issues are the bacteria that grow when you're trying to digest animal proteins. So all types of meat and dairy are in that category. There's one thing that many people don't know, and that is that the World Health Organization has declared processed meats a class 1 carcinogen. They convened in 2015 with 22 scientists from 10 countries and looked at all the scientific information and made that statement. And in addition to that, they said, and probably most mammalian meat is carcinogenic.
Mm.
So we know, yes, we know that 40% of cancers in our society are driven by diet and lack of exercise, which really
Mm.
breaks your heart.
Oh, yeah.
But we know the World Health Organization has also looked at this independently with independent scientists and said, yeah, it's true. Processed meat causes cancer, period. So lunch meat, bacon, jerky, all of those do it.
So
And of
even
course,
not just like when processed food, people probably think mostly about all this deli food,
yeah,
like turkey, sausages, but you talk overall. So even if it is a chicken that is considered to be the best and safe, unless it's salmonella or something. So then chicken is considered a diet protein, but it's not for you.
Yeah, it's an animal protein. One thing
Okay.
to consider is most of the meat that we're exposed to that's available to us to purchase is not the same meat that our parents grew up
That's so
with.
true.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
my grandparents were Hungarian. They came from the village, you know, in the old country. And so they were self-sufficient. They had their garden, they had their chickens,
Mhm.
but they weren't the same processed. They didn't use the same processing that's used in farming today. That was all fresh food. That was
But
all fresh food.
yeah, that's an excellent point because Erin, if you think about, people probably will say, well, I would rather eat protein, especially now with the keto diet, and then lots of advices to kind of
Mhm.
fill your body with protein and fat. But
Yes,
but you also mentioned your ancestors who came from
yes,
Hungary. That's amazing. I'm so happy that we met. But so the thing is that now the produce is not that fresh and also filled with pesticides, and people worry about all this genetically engineered food,
that's right.
since it's a limit now. So when we eat just beans and everything that is grown in those farms, we don't know who manages those farms, what kind of pesticides and also herbicides people
Yes,
use. So how trustful you can be if you eat just a whole food plant based?
yes. What we try to do, for example, a wonderful breakfast is using oatmeal. We love to use oatmeal and plant-based milks and fruit. That's a lovely breakfast. I do steer people toward buying organic oats. And we love to eat steel cut oats and regular old fashioned oats because they are less processed. And you'll find when you look at foods in the store, if you can buy organic, it's very helpful to do that because they are organic. They're not subject to the pesticides or herbicides. And they usually cost maybe $1 or two more. Now, that may be too tight of a budget for some, and that's okay. Switching to the plant-based diet is the most important thing. If you can do organic in addition to that, or do organic for some foods, then that's a lovely thing too. You know, when you get down to beans are the perfect food when you're on a tight budget because, as you know, you can buy a 1 pound bag of dry beans. And when you soak it and cook it the next day, you get 6 cups of beans. So, what could be more economical than buying a bag of beans? And
Oh,
you flavor
absolutely.
it. Yes, you flavor it with your onions, celery, and your produce, and you can throw anything in there that you think would taste good. We try to avoid oil. I know that when you look at the marketing, you mentioned chicken. Going back to the chicken, what I like to reflect on, and what I have reflected on a lot in the past 2 years, is how much marketing influences us in every decision we make from the time we get up till the time we go to bed.
Oh, absolutely,
And
yeah.
we've grown up with it. It's like it's second nature to us, and that's exactly what companies want us to do. They want their marketing messages to be second nature to us and to ask questions and say, and everybody asks me that, well, how about chicken? Well, how about fish? Well, just that's part of the marketing message, is that all of that's okay. We try to focus on organic because of the pesticides, but we know from research that Roundup is not only on the plant, but it's also soaked up through the roots. So it gets internally into the product. So really, that's why we focus on organic oats and organic vegetables if we can. When I go to the grocery store and I look around to shop in the produce section, I pick the freshest produce. If that produce is organic, that's wonderful. If the organic looks old, I choose the freshest that's non-organic because fresh is important too. The fresher it is, the higher nutrient value it has. The longer it sits, the more it loses nutrient value. So I always look for fresh. You've heard people talk about when you go shopping, it's good to go around the periphery of the grocery store. Try to stay out of the aisles. And that's overall, that's true, except you just want to bypass the lunch meat counter when you're going through. But yes, stick with your fruits and vegetables, your beans. When you eat healthy fats, you don't want to gorge on those either. You can gain weight eating healthy fats. So if you use olive oil, use it just a little bit. I buy it in the spray container. If I want to put it in a pan and I want to toast, for example, Brussels sprouts, I put a couple squirts from the spray bottle. I don't pour. You can use broth to brown onions and sweat onions. Just put a little bit of broth in your pan instead of oil. It works beautifully. So you've eliminated the oil altogether. When
So
people are,
what you yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when people are trying to lose weight, we do try to avoid the extra oils because it's whether it's olive oil or one of the unhealthy oils, the hydrogenated oils, it's still the same number of calories and fat grams per tablespoon. So when you're
So
trying to
even
lose
if it
weight,
is, even if it is a plant based, so the whole diet is plant based.
yes,
But oils, even though they're plant based, they should be limited
correct. That's
because
correct.
of the fat. Okay.
Because of the
Uh,
fat content.
yeah. So, but then it completely eliminates my question about keto diet because keto is all based. Though now I'm connecting it with your approach. Even keto diet probably can be based on beans, right? So more protein, but
I'm not sure that the keto diet includes beans
oh.
because it's a meat and dairy heavy diet because it's a high fat diet, which helps people lose weight quickly, temporarily, but ultimately for the long term, it's very unhealthy and can
Mm-hmm.
promote heart disease and strokes.
So Mediterranean diet is closer to what you say, but at the
Yes.
same time, Mediterranean diet does not exclude poultry and meats and chicken.
Well, that's correct. My understanding of a true Mediterranean diet is that it really limits limits the poultry and meats. It uses fish sparingly and really concentrates on the legumes and fruits and vegetables. And they do use a little oil. And of course, lots of people like to say, well, you get to drink wine with the Mediterranean diet. But in fact, I think Americans have changed the true definition of of a Mediterranean diet to create something that they feel will be healthy when it's really not. True Mediterranean diet is maybe no more than 2 to 3 ounces of wine at dinner, red wine, and then focusing on the fruits, vegetables, and legumes, and maybe fish, and using olive oil sparingly. But when you hear people talking about it here, they make it sound like you can have 2 to 3 glasses of wine and that's okay and you'll be healthy and you can fry your stuff in olive oil and that will be wonderful, but it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be
Uh, it,
careful too.
okay, that's very interesting. So first of all, it comes back to advertisement, like you said, that catches our attention. And since it's promoting a Mediterranean diet, among others, there are so much information that sometimes very confusing. But so of
Yes.
course Mediterranean diet, like what you say, the real one is less of oil and
Mhm.
just a little of wine, because people, when it comes to wine, then okay, women can have a glass of like 5-6 ounces a day, and then men 2 glasses. Yeah, so it's what you say, actually just 2-3 ounces if they take it, but also more fruits. Question I have then, with I remember how back when I was just very young, I was, I believe, like 20, 21, I saw a program, and it was a lady, a specialist in diet, so like you are, and she looked gorgeous like you are. She was just so gorgeous. But the thing was that she says, guess how I am, how old I am.
Mhm.
And the people in the audience says, okay, you're like 54, 55. And she says, well, I'm 78. And she was unbelievably young looking, unbelievable, like 30 years younger. And she says,
Yeah.
and why is that? She said, And she says, because I do not eat meat.
There you go.
And that got my attention because at
Yes.
2021, of course, I was obsessed about keeping my youthfulness, right?
Yeah.
Um, and just because I went to a cosmetologist and she asked me, how old are you? And I said, I'm 20, let's say 21. And she said, oh my gosh, I thought you're 25. And it just broke my heart. And so
Oh, no.
since then, I was just obsessed about looking younger than older. And but coming back to that specialist professional who talked about how to eat and what to eat, so she promoted, like she says, all I eat a day instead of meat, I said, I eat like, a handful of nuts. So
Yes.
I remembered nuts, but I did not pay attention about the portion.
Yes.
So I want to talk to you today now at this point about portions, because what happened to me after
Mhm.
2 weeks, I started sensing some kind of a very strange pain in my left part of abdominal. And to make it short, it took me to the hospital, and I had a pancreatic crisis. I had a pancreatic
Oh, no.
swelling. Oh my gosh! And so since
That's
it was,
painful.
oh my gosh,
Mm.
and all my tests were so high, so bad that the doctor simply says, okay, we have to operate on you.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
imagine, in Russia at that time, to operate on pancreas means that you are a handicapped person for the rest of your life.
Oh, my
So
God.
of course, my mother, when I called her, she says, "No, you're getting out of the hospital right now. No surgeries." And I said, "Mom, but I'm already on the way to the operation room." And she says, "No, I'm interfering.
Wow.
You're going home." And I did. And next day I was fine. But so
Whew.
you see, what happened was, I, instead of having like 2, 3 nuts a day,
Yeah.
I had a lot. And that probably threw off my pancreas because it was too much fat and too much
Mhm.
also fiber, right? So tell me, what is the right and best dosage of nuts, since you mentioned nuts as a
Okay.
part of a healthy diet?
Okay. Well, you're right. When you held up your hand like this, we just are looking in the palm of our hand.
But so,
Or,
like, feeling it or just on the bottom? That's the thing, you see. I
yeah,
felt like,
right.
okay,
Yeah, about probably 3 to 4. If you took a quarter cup measuring cup and
okay.
you put nuts in there, that would be one serving of nuts for the day. That would be plenty. And it's good that you brought that up because I also like to talk about it, what one serving of avocado is. One serving of avocado is 1/4 of an avocado.
Oh no.
Well, I know it's easy to cut it in half and just eat it.
Yeah.
I've done that plenty of times. But technically, the amount of fat in an avocado, you only really need 1/4 of an avocado.
A day or a portion at a time?
1/4 a day.
A
One
day.
quarter a day. Yes.
But then tell me, then, what do you do with the rest? Because even if I got a special kind of a container for avocado,
Mhm.
but it gets dark on the
Brown.
edges, is it eatable or you have to cut it, slice it off?
No, that is edible. There isn't anything wrong with the brown part.
Okay.
One trick that I use, actually learned it from the kids in my gym, was when I cut it in half, I cut it lengthwise and
Okay.
take it off and leave the pit in that one side. Remove the quarter that you're going to eat and then take what's left and save the skin and put it right back on top of the uneaten portion with the pit. You put it right back on top and put it in a baggie and seal it tight and um,
Okay.
get the air out. And that frequently minimizes the amount of brown that you'll see when you open it up the next day.
And refrigerate, right?
Yes, and refrigerate.
Okay. Oh,
Exactly.
that's very helpful because I felt like, since it's getting brown, plus I wasn't sure about the dosage. So the portion, I will absolutely eat the half of the avocado and then put another one into that container. Okay. And of course, I removed the pit. So now I
Yes,
won't
yes,
remove the
save the
pit.
pit because it'll
Okay.
help prevent that browning from happening.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So keto is temporarily solution, as you say, and it's lots of fat and it's lots of animal protein rather than
It is. It's really just not healthy.
whole food. Okay. So what else? you remember in the beginning we promised also talk about food and managing stress and hormones and kind of shifting our body to begin transformation. So then the second part was how exercise and movement helps manage stress. So you have the 6 pillars,
Yes,
and all of them, yes, all of them are kind of covering certain areas of our life: sleep, staying away from alcohol, right?
yes,
And then, like you say, moderate exercise,
yep.
stress reduction. So let's talk a little about connection between exercise and stress.
Okay. Oh, well, that's wonderful. Years ago, when I was able to run, I'm not able to run anymore. I love my workouts. I love going to the gym. I do lots of weightlifting and bicycling. Years ago, when I'd run and I was delivering babies, I'd get out on the road to run and I could do 5 miles after I came home from work. But what I realized at the time was that was like pounding my stress into the pavement. I mean, I
Hmm.
just like, okay, I'm going to get this over with. And by the time I come home, I'd feel so much better. And it does. It gives you more energy. You burn excess calories. It helps your digestion the same way. Movement prevents constipation. And you drink lots of water, which also prevents constipation. So, movement is really central to feeling good. And movement always improves our cardiovascular health. And we know that you don't have to go to the gym and spend 4 or 6 hours in the gym beating yourself up to do it. 30 minutes of walking 5 days a week dramatically improves cardiovascular risk and improves your mental health. And it
And
doesn't
that's
have to
what. Hmm.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it doesn't have to be all at one time. That 30 minutes can be divided up. If you're a busy mom or busy dad and you are getting kids ready to go to school and you're worried about breakfast or packing lunch or getting them off and going to work and coming home and then you have dinner and blah, all the stuff that goes on. If you can get in your 10 minutes 3 times a day, you go out and just take 10 minutes to yourself, walk around the block, do some stairs at the office. If you can do that, you're getting in your 30 minutes 5 days a week. And that does the
Hmm.
trick. So it's a matter of rethinking what we're doing. It's putting an idea on our radar screen and saying, okay, this is going to be on my radar screen, and I'm going to try to figure out how to fit this in. Well, maybe I can't fit in 30 minutes when I first started. Maybe I can do 10 minutes in the stairwell, or do one lap around the building, or maybe take 10 minutes of my lunch hour and figure it out that way. But there are ways to do it. And certainly there are ways to brainstorm that, and we're here to help people figure that out. But I think once you start thinking about it and it's on your radar screen, you'll start to get more ideas. And I think that that filters into all of these other things that we're talking about. We're so busy and we do have a lot of stress and we have lots of obligations. We have family, financial, we've got home mortgages to pay. We've got all of these things going on, that these types of things that we're talking about today are just not on our radar screen. But once we start thinking about it and we start looking at it and we start reading labels in the grocery store and we see all of the chemicals that they put in food or the oils that we know are going to cause cardiovascular disease, we can start to say, I don't want to do that today. I'm not going to do that to my body today. It doesn't mean I can't have a treat now and then. Um, I think it's important just to add in quickly. One of the things that Dr. T. Colin Campbell talked about in his decades of nutrition research and studying different populations around the globe, which he described in his book, The China Study, he talked about populations who were healthier that didn't have all the chronic disease that we have because less than 5% of their total intake was animal proteins and dairy.
Hmm.
So I look at that, and when I talk to people about changing their diet, I talk to them about our goal of making that less than 5% of their intake overall. And it's a transition, just like the walking program, the eating, you do it a little at a time. You just can't expect yourself to change overnight. You take
Hmm.
one project, take one challenge, and tackle that and feel good about it and tweak it and then move on to the next one. And that's how it works for people.
And so that basically your formula on in your approach that you have on your website is people will probably say I cannot afford 150 minutes, right? And first of all, it's a moderate exercise, but also instead of pushing it like 150 minutes in 3 days, you suggest to stretch it and have different
Yes.
small kind of incremental approach, right?
Mhm.
That allows us
Yes.
to have this 30 minutes. For example, like you say, 30 minutes 5 days a week or 10 minutes 3 times per day, and so kind of stretch it. But also I like your idea of stretching when we are in the office, because
Yes.
or take a short walk,
Yes.
because then it does not take too much time of your whatever projects we are working on, but also energizes us. I personally do that. I've
Yes.
learned that, and it did not come right away, of course, but somehow listening to other people. That's why I appreciate and our audience that you are with us today, because every new speaker sharing their experience, like you shared today, a lifetime of experience, and as a professional, as a doctor, and also as a gynecologist who works with women and
Yes.
knows so deeply how our hormones are changing and
Mhm.
why by 40 years old it's just like it's inevitable that we will go through certain changes. But
Yes.
also, what you offer a whole program that is not expensive, does not
Yes.
require going to the gym, does not require to, break up with your partner or husband, but quite opposite. Engage them and bring them into this new healthy lifestyle that requires
Yes.
just adjustments, right? And
Yes.
you don't have to have kind of subscription for expensive food programs
Yeah.
or yeah, but honestly just everything that is available, but just requires some thinking and rethinking, correct?
Yeah. New ways of thinking, and to know that people need to know that they don't have to buy and invest a lot of money in supplements. I mean, there are no gimmicks to this. This is just really, it's basic, and yet it's new for most of us because we didn't grow up this way. And but we're not trying to sell things. We just want people to be healthy and happy and know that they can live a long life doing these things on their own and have fun with it. And once they do it, it's infectious and they'll feel better and they lose weight naturally. They lose weight without worrying about it. It just happens on its own.
Hmm.
They do need to, well, just one thing I'd like to throw in there, they do need to work with their doctor. If they are diabetic, they need to be able to test their sugars at home if they're going to do this. They need to
Okay.
be able to monitor their blood sugar and their blood pressure at home if they take this on, because their medication requirements can drop drastically. And it's especially important for diabetics to avoid being hypoglycemic. So they've got to monitor their sugars if they're going to switch away from what they're doing into plant based. And they need to work with their doctors to regulate their medication.
Mm-hmm. And does it
Mhm.
apply also to cardio specialists if people have high blood pressure and
Yes,
cardio? Yeah, because even like with a moderate exercise, I think you're right. You have to talk to the doctor how to start and gradually, right,
yeah,
increase the number of minutes maybe, and even frequency, and also the intensity. Correct?
that's right.
Okay, so let's summarize today your 6 pillars of health, also how it affects our longevity, and coming back to the beginning when you surprised me and made me very happy and hopeful that we can now promote among
Yes,
our listeners that yes, you can actually change, modify your genes and
yes,
not feel
that's
like, oh, I'm
great.
trapped, I'm out of control. So I think it's all about also some control. The people are control freaks, I think.
Yeah,
Right? So, but
and you
this way
really
you,
do. Mhm.
yes, your program, your approach allows people to gain some control over their lives and over their destiny and over
Yes,
how long they want to live. Am I correct?
yes, absolutely,
You see, I'm
absolutely.
trainable. I'm trainable. So
Yeah,
I'm listening. So I do eat cheese and I do it poultry. But remember when I shared my story about eat meeting?
yeah,
Not eating. I stopped eating meat at 20.
Did you? Hmm.
and then never ate it. And very infrequently, I can have a little of beef stroganoff,
Yes,
or but
exactly.
very, very infrequently. And so, and I think that when people ask me about my age and how old my children, and then they
Yeah.
just say, what, did you get married at 5? And so, and it makes me happy. And so looking at you, you look so wonderful. It just and I'm not asking about age, but it just tells me that you are after some secret, some kind of knowledge that people need to learn from you, and learn how to do that and implement in their life. So I appreciate you so much, Erin.
Oh,
So
goodness.
what
Well, I
will
appreciate you
be
too. I mean, I can tell your skin is radiant. You're just absolutely beautiful. And I think it shows. It absolutely
yeah.
shows. And I'm happy to share that I'm 65.
Oh,
I'm proud to be
wonderful.
65. I'm
Wow.
thrilled to be 65 and feel this good.
Wow.
I really
That
am.
is awesome.
It's
Awesome.
a wonderful blessing. Yes.
I applaud to you. You look wonderful, gorgeous. So let's continue doing what you're doing. And I'm learning a lot from you today. I have to admit that I have to kind of modify a few of my eating habits. Exercise, I do well, but eating, yes.
Yeah.
So I will try that to add more beans. And so it does not matter what kind of beans, right? Just any beans.
All
Okay.
beans work. Yep. They're
Okay.
wonderful.
Oh,
Yes.
that's awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. And
Oh, thank you
also,
so much.
you have a kind of a um, wealth of I will put on the screen now your website, wealth of advices and opportunities and services on your website. So,
Well, thank
and
you so
you
much.
address like a loss weight and hormonal change. And so I'm putting your website. Yes, absolutely. So, yes.
Well,
So
thank you so much. I'm so grateful. And we just love helping people feel better because they can feel better. And it's very,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you. And your smile and your energy and everything what you do, I think it's a huge inspiration for our audience that, yes, it is a way to change your life, to transform, but also,
oh, yes.
yes. And so here's your website, and I just kind of putting it here,
Yes.
lifestyle, medicine, wellness,
Wellness and
and
recovery.
recovery. Okay.
Mhm.
So lifestyle, medicine, wellness, and recovery. So Erin, thank you so much. Good luck to you. And
Oh, my goodness.
yes, and best wishes to our audience that they can come to you for advice and coaching. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lydia. It's a pleasure.
Bye.